Hi, I'm Resham Arden, and this is the Now I Know podcast, where we educate you on wellbeing topics. With me today is my dear friend Tolu, where we'll be talking about a sporting mindset for our wellbeing. Welcome, Tolu.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an absolute honour and pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. So to the audience listening, I know Tolu in many ways. So firstly, you probably all want to thank Tolu for my podcast because he's the one who encouraged me to actually launch it. So he's also got his own podcast, Dunamis EQ.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's all about emotional intelligence. So I really encourage the listeners out there to check out Dunamis EQ on all podcast platforms and on YouTube channels. But the way I would describe Tolu, to people that know me, I describe him as my mentor at Sky. He's also head of Sky Data, so he's a great leader in the office. But at Sky, he's also my sponsor. So every time I've wanted to do something, he puts a good word in for me. He challenges me. He's my coach. And I think one thing I want all listeners to know is great leaders need a sporting mindset and a lot of emotional intelligence. And you have both, which we're going to touch on today, Tolu. But in terms of your podcast, Tolu, I listened to your last episode with Richard Washington, giving great tips on recruitment. It was fascinating. I just realised all these years I've been recruiting the wrong way.
Me too.
So I have to share that with everyone that's recruiting, is check out this episode with Richard Washington. But you ask a question to your guests, which is, tell me your story from birth to being with me today.
Okay.
So you're asking everyone else those questions, but no one's asking you. So I'd like to ask you, Tolu, tell me your story from birth to being with me today.
Okay, how long do I have to answer this question?
As long as you need.
So firstly, honestly, thank you so much for having me. I think for me, it's amazing being in this room with you, remembering, we talked about this podcast and seeing all the episodes, and now we're actually here in a room. It's amazing. It's been really inspirational, really challenging for me, and it's a big part of why, you encouraged me then, like, it's so easy, let's actually just do your own podcast. So
Definitely.
You've been a massive part of my journey. So thank you so much for that and for having me here. From birth to where I am now, wow. So I was born in Nigeria, in the north. My parents were both actually born in the UK, while their parents were on holiday, but then moved back to Nigeria, grew up there. So I was born there, moved to England when I was 2 years old, because both my parents had British passports and they wanted to make a different life for us. So we moved to London when I was 2. We first lived in East London. We were very, very poor growing up, because my parents, and my mum is a lawyer, my dad's an engineer, but when they came over to England, their degrees and their qualifications were not recognised. So both my parents had really good jobs back in Nigeria, but then when they came here, they basically had to start everything again. So we moved to London when I was 2 years old, and then we just struggled for a long time, for probably about 10 years, we really struggled in this country. And at one point, my dad had to move away from London to get a job in Southampton so that he could, make ends meet and different things like that. And at one point, we were all there was 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom studio flat with no bathroom. It was in a HMO. It was really, really it was really disgusting. And my mum says we were wretchedly poor, right? So
wow, wretchedly.
Yeah, wretchedly
That's
poor.
a hard word.
Yeah. That's how my mum describes it. But to be honest, I had really good memories of my childhood because my parents were always there. They always tried to be around. They always tried to give us the time that we needed. And then probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, we moved to Southampton. Then we moved to other places in Hampshire. And then for secondary school, I went to this school called Bishop Laffer, and it's like a private school, but you don't have to pay for it. So really good standards, Church of England school. And that was really interesting for me, because up till then we'd kind of lived in not so nice places, been in that kind of environment. But then going into Bishop Laffer, it's in Chichester, it's in West Sussex. So there was not much diversity there at all. Right. So I went to this school, pretty much the only person that looks like me out of 1,000 people. And I think that really shaped me in quite a lot of ways. I think we were talking about this as we were coming over, where I just had to get really comfortable with being very different. Right. So coming from East London, where there was a lot of people like me, to Southampton, still quite a lot of people like me, but Chichester, no people like me. And I think that really shaped me a lot in terms of understanding people, how to navigate difference, understanding that, sometimes people ask you really, really weird questions, but it's because they don't know. And that's been really grounding for me in terms of growing up and understanding that. But at secondary school, I was an absolute rascal. I got in so much trouble. My parents were always in the school. And then I think when I reached about 16 and I went to college, that's when I really, I chose my subjects, I chose what I wanted to do. And that was a big turning point for me in terms of becoming a lot more, I don't know what the word is, but a productive, good citizen, better leader, all of those kind of things. But something that's been quite consistent, probably since I was about 14 is sports and basketball. It started when we first moved to Southampton. One of my best friends, we'd make basketball hoops when we were 9 years old. We'd play all day in the garden, and it wasn't structured or anything like that, but we were just messing around and playing. Then when I was about 14, I started getting into structured basketball, organized basketball. And that's where I really learned about hard work, and I learned about how you can grow, right? So I remember one coach said to me, never shoot the basketball, because I couldn't shoot to save my life. He was like, you are tall, you go and rebound. And that was all I had to do. And then that summer, I didn't like the fact that he told me that. So I went away, I watched videos on how to shoot. I learned, I reconstructed everything. And basketball was a massive, massive thing for me. So in college, I was the captain of the basketball team. I did student government and things like that. And then kind of between college and uni, I went to this basketball camp where they were like, you're actually a good basketball player. They put me in the high set and I learned so much. And that was a massive springboard for me going into university where I played. And then I studied abroad in America for a year, which is the home of basketball. And I tried out for a team that's a Division 1 team. And that, for me, growing up in England, you think hard work is a certain thing. But going to America and seeing the expectation, seeing how hard they actually work, for me, that totally shifted my whole mindset. So I came back to England, quite a different person. And then after university, I played semi-professional basketball for a few years for the Hemel Storm. I really on their business cards, it says something like expect excellence, right?
Wow.
That's what Hemel Storm basketball is about, is excellence. And what I realized as well is that I'm not that talented. So
really?
Yeah. So going from university where, I'm the captain, I'm a starter, but when you get into semi-professional in the pro leagues, everybody there was the man on their team, right? So someone has to be kind of bottom of the pile. And actually I was bottom of the pile, right? But what I learned there was that being a good teammate can get you really, really far, because there'd be years where I'm watching people get cut and I'm like, when is it my turn? Because that person's actually better than me. They're a better basketball player than I am. But there was something about, I think, probably the dynamic that I brought to the team as well, because I want to work hard. I want to be part of the team. I want to bring people together. And it just showed me how important that really is, because talent isn't enough. To really get you at that level, because at that level, everybody is talented, so you have to have something more. So I retired from basketball probably when I was 25, 26. And then I've been at Sky for 12 years and working this whole time. I've just been on a really cool journey of going from a grad to now I'm a head of department, which in my head is wild, right?
Yeah, but I love that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Head of Sky Data. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and I'm so grateful for that. And then, here I am now.
Oh, love that. Love that story. Yeah. Now you've got to answer that question, which is brilliant. So, you've mentioned sort of, growing up, you were the only one like you where you went. Did you find any sort of anything negative with that, any racism, or were they quite open to someone different?
It was probably mixed, because I think that there were definitely experiences of racism there. But on the whole, it was quite a positive experience. And I think part of it is about how do you deal with it. I think for me, even racism comes from a lack of understanding. And I think that I'm here to do my part in terms of bringing understanding. And that's probably how I've also always dealt with it. And I feel like I try to not to look for it, sometimes you can't avoid it, it's there, but I'm personally not proactively looking for it. So it's definitely been there, it's definitely been part of the journey and part of the experience. Randomly walking down a street, people have said stuff. But on the whole, I've just found people to be really curious. They don't understand, they don't know. Yeah. So I think for me, it's more, I prefer to treat it like that's where people are coming from.
Yeah. But that's a good mindset to start, right? Because it's more of a, like I say, compassionate than attack mode, defense mode, isn't it? Which
exactly.
I agree. And I've seen you generally in the working environment, Tolu, and you're very good at that. You're very good at diffusing situations or diffusing someone's way of thinking or calming people down. So it's a really amazing trait you have. So when you said one of your coaches was you're not great at shooting, you're better off on the side passing it. Did you want him to say, I'm going to teach you how to shoot? Or did you accept the fact that these are my strengths and I'm just going to play to my strengths?
Interesting. Do you know, I didn't even think about it, because I think for me, I'm a personal responsibility person, right? So yes, you can tell me I'm not good at shooting. So my thing is, what do I do about it, right? So I didn't even actually think about, should he be teaching me or not? And I think I just went away and I was like, what can I do to change that, right? Because, okay, if I know I want to do this role or perform in this way, I need to bring that skill set. And because the way it works in England is that, well, back then, I don't know about now, is that we would train once a week on a Sunday, right? And in that once a week, you're having to teach people the plays, you're having to get people having chemistry. So there's actually not that much time for my personal skills to be developed in that. And I think when you think about it at work, you know, you have limited times in your meetings and different things like that. So it's really on us to hone our skills outside of that and bring that into the environment and to manage our time that way. So I actually never thought about, you know, should he be teaching me or not? My thing was, okay, I need to get better. How can I get better myself and in my time? So it's really interesting because I never thought of that.
But because what you've just done is, you know, I do run a lot of workshops where one of them is called Own Your Success. And I say to people, don't wait for your manager to make you better. Right? There's so many ways where you can do that. And that's sort of what you did. You didn't really rely on your coach. You were like, I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that we live in the information age where there is so much information available. And this was like almost 20 years ago when YouTube wasn't on your mobile phone like that.
Yeah.
You know, but I still was able to find videos, find information. So now, if you want to learn pretty much anything, there's going to be a YouTube video or a website or something that you can find.
Yeah.
So you're right, like we can't rely on our managers to do that. But it's like a double-edged sword, right? And I don't know if that's the right word, but as a manager, our responsibility is to do that.
Yes.
But as someone who's being managed, I can't rely on that responsibility because not everybody takes it seriously.
Yeah.
So,
or they might not prioritize it as much as you will, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Or if you've got someone who manages 15 people, it's actually quite hard to do that across 15 people, you know? So being proactive and owning your success is so important. Absolutely.
So you know how you mentioned you were the only one in your area growing up, and now obviously we know when you get to senior roles like yourself, head of, there's not a lot of, you know, diversity, whether it's gender, ethnicity. You're obviously in a room where you're still probably going to be one of the only people like yourselves. How are you navigating that?
I think, to be honest, I don't think about it too much. Because I think for me, my focus is on adding value. Because for me, ideas and value, they speak for themselves. So regardless of who it comes from, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea, right? And I know people have issues where they've said something and someone else says it and it's taken from that other person. I think for me personally, I take that as, well, I still had a good idea, right? If the idea that I had still gets done, I don't, and maybe this isn't the best, but I don't particularly care, you know, who gets the credit for it. Because I know when I go to an interview, the idea that I had got implemented and it got done. Right? So for me personally, that's how I treat it in terms of focus on adding value and bringing something to the room. And then can I influence people to get my idea done if I think it's the right thing? And then not being too concerned about credit, because I've got this thing of either I'm going to get paid now for it or I'm going to get paid later for it. So if Sky or whoever I'm working for recognizes me, great. But if not, I'm going to take that experience to my next role, to my next opportunity, and I'm absolutely going to use that. So whether my current company recognizes it, I don't really care. You know, like it's great when they do, but if they don't, it's not, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop bringing my ideas. You know?
I love that. And you've always taught me that, like, I don't really care who does it, as long as change happens and it's for the good of the people. You're a really big believer in that. Do you think that also comes back, because you said when you were in the basketball team, you were just more about the team? Do you think you've sort of brought that in with you to your work environment?
Definitely. And I think this is where, for me, like when I have kids or anyone I talk to, like sports, whatever level you play at is a great thing for you, because it teaches you so much about yourself. It teaches you about teamwork. It teaches you about how to win, how to lose. Like you can learn so much from sports. And I think where I've really seen the most success is where people hold themselves to a really high standard. They hold themselves to account. You know, we're teammates, but you can go at me and I can go at you, but it's respectful. And at the end of the day, you're still my teammate. We're still on the same team. We've got to get through this together. And I feel like sports has taught me so much. I'm so grateful because I'm Nigerian, traditionally, like we don't really get involved with sports. Yeah, yes. Your books.
Education.
Your book, exactly. And you know that, right?
Yeah.
So my mum's brother, he was great at football, but he wasn't allowed to explore that.
Oh.
Yeah, and he regrets it, you know, because he could have been something really special. So my mum's seen that, and she said, no, my kids, if they show an interest in sport, I'm going to do it for them. My parents sacrificed sending me like 2 hours away when we didn't have money to go play basketball, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks to your mum and dad.
Honestly, I can't
make you the man
thank
you
them.
are today.
Honestly, I can't thank them enough. I really
absolutely.
can't.
So go back to basketball. So I took my kids to a London Lions final match a few weeks ago. Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Listeners out there, you've got to go to a basketball match, especially the finals. It was so cool, especially because you're into R&B hip hop. It was really, really great vibe. And one thing me and my kids were really shocked at was when the opposition was like about to shoot, the whole auditorium like boos, right? And then you put a post up on LinkedIn. I've got it here, right? And I want to touch on this post you did, right? So you basically said, boos don't block dunks, right? Because they would still get the dunks, yeah? And then you said, the crowd impacts the game for sure, but all they can really do is make noise to distract you. They can't get on the court and they can't stop you. You're the only one playing the game, the one scoring the points, the one dunking the ball. Don't let what the crowd say stop you from your game. Follow your dreams and follow taking the shot. Can you expand on that? Because I found it fascinating, because the way I saw it was, how is this basketball guy, how does none of this noise affect him? Like, and it made me think of like peer pressure at school, or just all these negative comments people say to you. Like, elaborate on that even more, because what were you trying to get from that LinkedIn post?
I think, so they call it also like the game within the game, right? And sometimes they say the crowd is like the sixth person on the court, because if you listen to the crowd, and in professional sports, people say terrible things, right, from the crowd. And if you listen to that and you let it get into your head, you will miss the shot, right? And it's not because you're not capable. It's not because you can't do it. It's because you're listening too much to voices that aren't actually on the court. And the way that I see it, sometimes people want to do something and they're scared of what people will think, right? So let's kind of take it. So let's say I want to start a business, right? The people on the court are the clients that I'm pitching to. They're the people who I'm trying to sell to. They're the people on the court. People are a bit worried about, am I going to get rejected from clients? That's one thing. But the real thing that people worry about is, what's my mum going to say? What's my auntie going to say? What's this person going to say? When they see that I've quit my job and I've started my business, or I'm doing a podcast, whatever it is, what are they going to say? These people aren't in the game, right? Yes. Your mum can say whatever she wants to, but she's not actually going to stop you. She's not the one that's going to buy or not buy. It's going to be a business. Yeah. So for me, it's really about identifying the voices that you're listening to, and are you listening to people that are actually in the game or not? Because there's a difference between someone booing and someone on the court trying to block your shot. Very different. And the crowd, the audience, they're not actually really in the game. They're there to distract you. And it only works if you let it, so we get taught to tune it out. So I remember in practice sometimes you've got your teammates saying stuff about your mum, your sister, and this is to practice for the game.
To train you.
That
mindset.
I think one of my favorite moments that I remember playing basketball was we were in this really tight game. And like I said, I wasn't the best person on the team, so I didn't get in very much, right? And there was this one game and we were away from home, and I was on the free throw line, and it was a tight game. Right, I'm on the free throw line, and your names are in the program, and so these people on the side are calling my name, saying all this stuff, and I hit both the free throws, and I looked at them, and they just went silent. And that for me is like one of the best feelings in basketball, is when you can do something to silence the other team's crowd. Wow. Oh, that's one of my favorite memories, I think.
Wow, that's what I just found it fascinating, and I've never been in that environment, and I felt, and I'm an empath, and I actually felt sorry for the guy. I'm like, oh, bless him, stop booing him. Yeah. And then you also mentioned on that post, you sort of said, with all the job losses and changing the world, it's great to see so many people stepping out and following their dreams and doing something new. And I think it was a really nice message. What you said is just like, just follow your dreams. Forget about what people are saying. Everyone's got an opinion, haven't they? Yeah. Even us like starting this podcast, the amount of people that will say, yeah, great podcast, but da 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 da. And I'm like, and you're right, I'm just blocking out the noise. I'm like, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm loving it. And talk to me when you're creating a podcast. Then let's talk. Yeah. Exactly. When we're both on the playing field, let's talk. Exactly. That's why I think you and I are great to help each other develop and grow in the podcast world, because I'm like, I've just learned something new, and then you're like, oh my God, I've just learned something new. So we want both of us to win, and that's something you've always said to me is where you're like, Resh, I just want you to win. And that's every conversation we've had is like, how can I help you win? And I just love that. And that's like, you've always got this like, athlete's mindset, this sports mindset. But I know your podcast is about emotional intelligence, right? So you've had loads of guests in terms of emotional intelligence. What have you learned from all the guests that have come to you about emotional intelligence? Is it just, because it's very different what they come out with, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's what I love about it, is that there isn't really one definition, right? You can have the dictionary definition, but the expressions that different people have is where it's special, right? And it's really about understanding, what does it mean to you and how do you use it to the best of your ability? So there's this concept of competing, right? And this lady, she's a basketball coach, and saying lots of people work hard, but not everybody competes. You can force someone to work hard, but you can't force them to compete. And so for me, with emotional intelligence, it's how do I compete in life with emotional intelligence? For me, it's a massive tool to help you to win, right? If you can understand other people, understand yourself, understand where you're trying to go, you can bring people along the journey with you, because you get so much further together. Like, there's stuff that you know that I will never know unless I talk to you about it.
Yeah.
Right. And vice versa. So we need each other, right? We need teammates who are going together in the same way. You know, even like a tennis player who is a solo athlete, their teammates are their coaching staff, you know, everybody that helps them. So no one can really make it by themselves.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I've loved, is hearing the different facets of emotional intelligence, how different people bring that to what they do, and saying, okay, I really like that bit, I'm going to do that bit. You know, that's a new weapon for me in my arsenal to compete in this game we call life.
In terms of the game we call life, right? So this podcast is all about well-being. It's all about making people not feel so alone. And I remember you once said that what sporting helped you with was when you didn't get a job or you didn't get the thing you wanted. And you said, like, I think being an athlete and with that sports mindset really helped you overcome those challenges. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. So basketball is a 40-minute game split into 4-minute quarters, and you've got 24 seconds for each possession. Right, so you've got to shoot, do something within 24 seconds. Otherwise, the other team gets the ball. So what that means is you get lots and lots of opportunities to make a play. And we had this coach, and what he said to us was, have a next play mentality. So if you screw up, don't be thinking about that going into the next play. You got to basically clear your mind and go, okay, now I'm here in this next play. How do I make it good? How do I make sure that I compete in this play? And for me, it's the same thing with life. You know, sometimes things are not going to go your way. Everyone's going to miss shots. Everyone's going to lose games. There is no sports person that has never lost a game. Everybody's lost. So apart from Floyd Mayweather, but, you know, he probably lost growing up, but everybody's going to have adversity.
Yeah.
But your resilience and your approach and your positivity and being able to focus on the next thing, be present in the next moment, that for me is what's really important, because like when you lead a team, people are going to mess things up on your team. Someone's going to get something wrong. But what's really going to determine how successful your team is long term is, how do we deal with adversity? How do we deal with getting something wrong? How do we deal with losing? You know, that is something special that differentiates good from great, bad from good. Like, that is what it's going to hang on, is how do you deal with when things don't go your way?
Yeah.
That's really the key of it, is can I be resilient? Can I bounce back? It doesn't mean that you don't have negative thoughts ever. No. It means, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
You know, how do I respond to it? Our response is what's going to determine our outcomes time after time after time.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's at Sky, obviously, you're my mentor, and obviously I mentor other people, and there was someone I was mentoring, and they were really upset. They didn't get the job they wanted. And, you know, I was explaining to them about your analogy of bouncing back, because I said, you know, you could either take this experience and become really negative, but then it's probably going to not really help you get the next role because they've just seen how you've behaved.
100%.
Or you can just learn from it, right?
100%.
Or realize it's not the right time and what can I do better? In terms of teams, like, has this emotional intelligence and this sort of team player and looking out for your peers helped you at work? Like, have you had a team where you've had to really get to know someone and realize, oh my God, they've got something going on outside of work. I really need to help them.
Yeah. Do you know what? So one side note. So someone who was on my podcast, Michelle, she said about bouncing forward.
Bouncing forward, that's the one, yes.
And I've taken that, and it's like, I'm not just trying to get back to where I was.
Yes.
I'm going to bounce past where I was, make progress, and move forward. So I've stolen that
Love
from her.
that. Bounce forward, guys, not bounce back.
I when she said it, I said, oh my gosh.
Such a simple thing, right?
Yeah. But it's such a big difference.
Yes.
It makes a massive difference. I think that's what I've probably learned the most from managing teams and people. Like some of the things that people have shared with me about what's going on in their home life, whether it's like domestic abuse or infertility or, bereavements in the family, it really makes you put everything into perspective and say, okay, this person is acting this way, but you don't really know what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
And that's where team is so important in terms of being able to cover each other, have each other's back and say, okay, you're having an off day, week, season, whatever it is, but at the core of it as a leader, I have to know that I believe in this person. I hired you because I believe in you.
Yeah.
You're here because I've seen something good in you.
Yeah.
So right now what's happening, that's not you. This is a circumstance, a situation, it's adversity, but that's not you.
Yes.
And that is what I really try and keep, is that most people want to be good at their jobs. Most people want to deliver value. They want to be valuable.
Yeah.
They're not here to just collect money for free. There are some people, but that's not most people.
Yeah.
So that's where understanding and saying, okay, what is really going on with you?
Yeah.
What's going on at home? Is everything okay? It makes a massive difference because I can cover you.
Yeah.
I can come alongside you and you don't have to feel alone, because I feel like at work especially, people feel like, is it okay to talk about that stuff at work?
Yeah. They're not sure.
And that's where for me it's so important that we have those conversations, because we are like holistic people, right? It's not that easy to separate work and home, and this work will affect home will affect work.
Yeah.
Everything's going to mix together. And that's where it's so important that we take care of the whole person, not just their performance at work.
Absolutely. I think kindness is key, isn't it?
Yes.
Because when there is that, when you're leading a team and there's that frustration. Imagine you're a coach and your team isn't performing and they're not having a great day. It's not like them.
Yeah.
So adversity doesn't define you. It's like we all have good and bad days, But Tolu, I've met loads of leaders on my journey, loads of leaders. There is not a leader out there like you. You are kind, you are humble, you care about your people. You want everyone to win. And there needs to be more people like you, right? But what made you like this? Is it your upbringing? Is it your circumstance? How were you like this? You've got siblings. Are you all like this?
I think a big part of it is from my parents. So we come from a Christian background. And what I've loved about my parents is that they tried to raise us not as Nigerians, but as Christians. So a lot of the things in the Bible about kindness, about gentleness, about humility, those are things that I've not only been taught, but I've also seen my parents live out. So for example, my dad, when he goes to the scrapyard, if you see how he interacts with every single person in that place, he's so kind, so respectful. It doesn't matter if they're the bottom person or the top person. My dad has always been like that. And my mum, just the way that they've always dealt with us as kids and then transitioning into adulthood, I've learned so much from my parents. And like I said, I can never thank them enough for what they've done for me. And then I've had great leaders throughout my career at Sky. So, Harry Gill, Wayne Butler, my current leader, Danny Chambly, all these people have shown me how to lead with emotional intelligence. Yeah. So for me, I'm very much a product of the people, the coaches, everybody, my friends, I have great friends. My network is so good. It's full of people like you, they're just great. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to have been around good people. And it's just that constant thing of, okay, here's a good example to learn from. Here's a good one. This didn't go so well. Okay, why didn't that go well? How do I learn from that? Because you can learn from good and bad people. Yeah. Pierre Copper from work, right? So I had a couple of mentoring sessions with him, and he was like, you might want to go work for an a-hole, right? Like a bad person. And I'm like, why would I ever want to do that?
Yeah.
And he was like, you can learn so much from learning. Because I was a little bit hesitant to move out from under Wayne, right? So
Wayne's amazing.
Wayne's I love Wayne to pieces, right? And I was thinking about my career progression and wanting to become a head of department, and it didn't look like there was opportunity. And I was telling him, like, I want to go work for someone good. And Pierre was like, you might want to go work for an a-hole. And I was like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
And he said, because you can learn so much. You'll find out more about yourself. You'll know what kind of leader you want to be, you don't want to be. And when he said that, it freed me to say, okay, I'll go try something new. And if they're an a-hole, it's okay. I will learn.
This.
Exactly. I'll become better from that. So those are some of the touch points that I've had that have helped me say, okay, it's okay. Step out, do this, do that. And just to grow as a leader, which I think is so important for everybody.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I was having this discussion. I think we spoke about it, how I brought someone into the business, young guy, grad, and he, obviously, I'm very kind and very nurturing type of motherly type manager. And he's like, oh my God, it's great here. I said, it's not always this great. And he wanted it for another job. And I said, just so you know, not all leaders are like me and Tolu. And there was another guy called Dem that we used to work with. And thank God he's gone to a great team and we love it. But he, I had to open his eyes that not everyone is like this. And that's why looking after yourself and really just like owning your success is so important. So obviously this podcast is about well-being, Tolu. And have you ever been in situations where you wished you looked after your well-being even more? Like, did lockdown affect you?
That's a really interesting question. I think, So I think for me, your physical health is really important, right? And that links into the mental, and the mental leans into the physical. And I remember in the lockdown, I had this housemate, Mido, and he was Egyptian. And one day he looked at me and he went, brother, you're getting fat. And I was like,
oh no.
I was just like, what? And for me, that was a really caring thing to say, because he knows me. He knows what's important to me. He knows the values I try and live my life by.
And he came from a good place.
Yeah. And he's like, brother, and I could tell there was compassion there,
Yeah.
And that really sparked me to start taking better care of myself and playing within the rules of what we could do in lockdown, going to the car park and doing skipping and doing this. And it really boosted even my mental headspace. But I think in this last few months, there's stuff going on at work that I'm not going to fully say, but it's been really emotionally draining. And I really had to take a step back, look at all the things that I had going on, and then start to prioritize, and then start to say, okay, I know that my capacity is being soaked up right now by this thing. My, whether it's my time, my emotions, my headspace is being zapped by this thing. So I need to take a step back. I need to start saying no to some things. I need to start, prioritizing getting free space where I don't have to think about anything.
Yeah.
And that's been really interesting for me, because I feel like I'm generally quite level, things don't necessarily really faze me this much. But, in this situation, and this is also what I've realized, I think I take things happening to other people a little bit harder than it is for me. Because if it's for me, I'm like, I can roll that off. But watching other people go through something, and watching people who I really like and I respect going through that was really, I wanted to fight everyone. I was like, oh, and that was really tough for me.
Yeah.
Actually, really, really tough for me.
And I feel that a lot, because I know when I always say you're like my brother from another mother. Like, if I need you, I'm like, Tolu, I need to talk to you. And you I've got you.
Ready.
But then when it's you, you're just like, yes, cool. It's fine.
What it is.
We're just rolling with the punches, But I really appreciate that. But also, I'm really trying to get more men to open up about their feelings and mental health, especially after lockdown. Wellbeing's really, really been an important topic. So who supports you, Tolu, when you really need that someone to talk to?
So I have a really good group of friends. So when I was getting married and Carla asked me okay, how many groomsmen do you want? And I had my list and it was 27 people.
Wow.
Right. And she was like, what? How'd you have? But I have so many good guy friends around me who will ask the tough questions, will say the tough thing, brother, you're getting fat. You need to, what's going on? You know? So I've been so blessed to have really good friendships growing up. But what I found is that comes by being open. That comes by, so in the Bible it says, if you want to have friends, show yourself friendly.
Nice.
So if I want to have lots of friends, I also need to be a friendly person.
Yes, true.
And if I want to have openness and I want to have good relationships, I have to give that myself. I have to be willing to say, look, I'm not having a good day right now. This is going on in my life and it's really hard. You know, so I think as guys, sometimes it feels like that's a really hard thing to do. You know, back to the thing about the crowd, you know, what are people going to say if I tell them that this is what I'm going through?
Yeah.
If I tell them, so I had one of my friends tell me that he'd thought about committing suicide.
Wow.
You know? And in the moment, I was like, I'm so grateful it didn't actually work or it didn't happen.
Yes.
But in that moment, you must have felt like you couldn't tell me that.
Yeah.
You know, and that for me, like, has just challenged me, like, okay, have the awkward conversation. You know, like you see something going on and you say, like, how are you doing? And someone's like, oh, I'm okay. It's like, no, but really, how are you actually doing? What's going on? And I think sometimes as guys, we're uncomfortable to go past that first bit of, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know, I'm okay. Everything's good. And to really ask 3-4 times, okay, but how are you really doing? How do you really feel about that?
Yeah.
You know, I saw this happen. What did you think about that? You know, and open up those conversations. And that's one of the things I love about podcasting is that it teaches you to ask better questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the key.
Definitely.
Ask better questions.
So, you know, you said you've got great friends around you, they know the right questions to ask. So if there's someone listening out there and they know that there's one of their male friends or female, whoever it is, isn't right and they don't know what's the right question to get to open up, could you share like a great question that someone said, which is obviously an open question that helped you open up?
So I think when you ask someone like, how are you doing? You know, they'll say, oh, I'm okay, I'm good. But like, what's good? What's good at the moment? What's bad at the moment? You know, what have you been going on? What's been going on with you? Like, how's work? What's happening here? And I think it's getting past that first initial question. I was taught about, you know, the 5 whys. So, and this was in a client perspective. So, you know, someone says, oh, I want to increase my sales. Why do you want to increase your sales? Because, you know, I want more money. Why do you want more money? You go through many iterations of asking people why, and that opens up conversations. And someone said to me about listen to understand, not to respond. So if you're going to have that conversation with someone, almost like commit to yourself that I'm not really going to respond other than to find out more. So in the podcast with Richard Washington, they talked about and what else?
Yes.
You know, so like, okay, you're good. And what else? You know, what else is going on? And you can ask it lots of different ways, but really just ask more probing questions. As a principle, ask questions that will help you to understand that person more, whatever that looks like. So if someone says, you know, I'm good, you can say, okay, out of 1 to 10, what would you say you are? You know, because good could be 3, it could be 10. So what does good mean to that person?
Yeah.
You know?
And what is it compared to yesterday, right?
Exactly. And why?
Yeah.
Why is yesterday different from today?
Yeah.
What's gone better? What's gone worse?
Yeah.
So those kind of things, those nuances are really important in understanding people and opening people up, because people like to talk about themselves, right?
I like how you said, listen to understand.
Yes.
Because I think some people fear asking the question because they're like, I don't know what to do with this information.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
You don't. Wayne did that to us once, right? So in our team meetings, he would say, I'm going to ask everybody to rate themselves from 1 to 10 in terms of how happy they are. We're not going to do anything about it, so I'm not going to try and fix it, but I just want to hear, how are you feeling? And this was like during COVID. It was like, I want you to reflect on how you're feeling and share that with the group, you know? And it wasn't so that he could fix it. It was just, how are you feeling? And why are you feeling that?
Wow.
Yeah.
And it helped him understand, like, where everyone's energy levels are today.
Exactly.
Isn't it? That's brilliant. Love that.
And it made it so that if I then want to have a different conversation with someone, we all know how each other are feeling. You know, so if you're a 3 and I'm a 3, I can go to you up and say, hey, I feel like a 3 too. Like, if you really want to, let's have a conversation.
That's lovely.
It opens the door. And I thought that was really powerful.
That's so nice. And I think what's worked with me is, like, you know, I've always shared, I'm quite open. I've started to share. As the more comfortable I've been at work, I think I've shared how I am, or like even just stuff like, oh God, just, you know, I've only had 4 hours sleep today. And someone else goes, oh my God, same here. You know, like, just opening up first is so important. But for those that can't open up, it's really hard.
I think as a leader, that vulnerability is so powerful, because at Sky, people look up to you a lot. Right, so for them to hit, it's factual, you know, like it's not even, it's just a fact, you know. So for them to say, okay, Resh is someone I look up to, and she has off days, or she feels this way, or that makes them feel like, oh, it's okay, you know, it's normal for someone to not feel great all the time.
Yes,
you know, and as leaders, I feel like that is so important to open up to your teams and say, okay, this is actually what's going on with me.
And it's funny you say that, because I shared it with somebody, and then they didn't even realize that I went through a divorce and I was single over lockdown, and they were like, you know, you need to share your story, because
Agreed.
you know, the amount of people can relate to you, and they're like, oh, actually, like, even great people have bad days.
Yeah.
And we all do. And I was like, okay, so it was on my mind. And you were like, Resh, you got to go for it. And I thought, and it's so powerful, isn't it? Just sharing your story.
Yeah.
Such a powerful thing. The power of conversation is massive, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, speaking of the power of conversation, you and I connected even more because we're both part of like a diversity inclusion network. And you were like, you approached me like, Resh, we'd love you to share your journey and your story. And I was like, what, me? You know, and you're like, yeah, people want to hear from you. And I was really surprised. So I thank you, Tolu, because that was one of my first talks. I did one on stage once, but it was one of my first talks sharing my story. And at the time, you don't realise the impact. It's just after when people listen, they like bump into you. They're like, thank you. But on the podcast, we're doing it when you realise the impact after. So I really thank you for sharing your story as well. But I think with the sporting mindset, another thing that really helped me understand people was I talk about a lot with people in my workshops is the Playbook on Netflix.
Okay.
They basically, if you've not seen it, it's a really great way of looking at teams because it's about, you know, coaches and managers that have taken football teams and basketball teams and how they've turned them around when they're at the lowest low.
It's called The Playbook?
The Playbook on Netflix. Really good. And but what's really interesting is it doesn't show the highs of the teams. It shows the lows and then how they... And a lot of it was like togetherness and knowing your people. And that sports coach mindset relates to everything. Even in lockdown, there was a guy called Tony Lester, like a journalist in Sky, and he did a talk called How to Look After Yourself Like an Athlete. And he basically was like, does an athlete run from 9 till 5? No. Does an athlete not eat and not to have water or take a break? And I then did that talk with my team because there were people on my team that found lockdown hard because they weren't logging off, they were working till late. And I said, you're going to burn out. Burnout's a really, really big thing. And you and I went to an event a few days ago, didn't we, about burnout. And it's massive in this working culture, you know. So I know with coaching, when you were training to be a basketball player, did you ever burn out because you really wanted to be the best you could be?
No, because I think, and I feel like this is where understanding yourself and also knowing what's going to have the biggest impact is so powerful, right? So with basketball, if you're not careful, you can run your body into the ground because you're training, you can overtrain, right? Your body is best after rest and recovery. And you can have active rest and things like that, and et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like with basketball, because and do you know what? Maybe if I was a professional athlete, it might have been different. Maybe because when I was semi-pro, I was still working. So I had to go to work. You know, 8 hours a day, I have to be working. I can't be training. So in between, I would love to go train, right? And that's why I think sports is so great because it's physical. You have to think, you have to do this, you have to do that. So for me, that was really, really powerful. I think I've probably been closer to burnout in work than I have in sports. Because I feel like sports has, you know, I have 2 hours of training and then I can do my extra stuff if I want to, but I can't also physically train out 8 hours, 9 hours a day. Yeah. But at work, I have to be there 7.5 hours. Then if I want to, I can work another 4 or 5 hours. And in lockdown, like you said, it was so easy to kind of flow that through. And I think what I've been quite blessed with is that in my early career, I worked like a madman till like 1, 2 in the morning. But that got me to where now I don't have to. And my dad is actually, and his dad were workaholics. So I've also had awareness of that. Like we have the capacity to work ourselves. And so I've been quite conscious of that. And that's probably also why I've never really got to that place. Because my dad and I have had conversations about it. Like his dad was always away, never available, always working. And my dad tried to really do differently. And he really did. And now that he's, you know, all the kids are gone, he works as long as he wants to. But identifying that trait is there has probably been what's also stopped me from really going to that place because I know it can happen.
And I think because like you and I have come from, you know, like immigrant families, you know, their whole ethic, isn't it? Culture is just, you just got to work hard to be something. Work hard, just don't stop. So it's a bit like, you know, when you want to do something different, like your own business, they get worried because like, no, you have to work for somebody and your bills need to get paid.
The security.
But it's their map of reference, which we've spoken about, is that's all they knew. You know? And I think one thing you and I really love doing is nurturing the new people that come in. You know, and I think you and I are very much like, you know, we're seen as these figures that really care about the people and not just, you know, all the people that are already great leaders, but all those new people. And it's like, you know, this is how you're going to navigate your career, you know, and this is how I'm going to help you. So I think that's been amazing. But even with you just saying to people, like, I just want you to win, like, you've always just had this passion, isn't it? So do you do this outside of work as well with people you know?
Absolutely, because I think for me, what is better than my friends winning, right? What's better than seeing people happy? And sometimes it's tough to get there, right? And that's the journey, and that's what friendship is for. And one of my friends, he said something really cool. He said, like, your friends should be like your board of directors as a company. You should be able to come to your friends and they have an invested interest in you. They want you to succeed. And sometimes it's going to be tough questions and challenging, but it's about the only reason I'm asking you is because I want you to win. Like, I don't care if you do what I'm telling you to or not, right? As long as you win, it doesn't have to be by my advice.
Yes.
So for me, like, I would love to see all my people winning.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of if I'm winning, I'm making loads of money, I'm doing all this stuff, but my friends can't enjoy it with me.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of that? Because also, even if I have all the money in the world, there's going to come a point where my friends are tired of taking stuff from me because I have good friends like that.
Yeah.
They're going to want to be able to bring their own and contribute. So the only way is really that we all win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think surrounding yourself with great people, it makes a huge impact, right? So I think anyone listening who is feeling really down, it's trying to find that community of people that you can really open up and talk to. We spoke about I've got my other podcast with Suk Pada, and it was like, I've met like, they say men don't speak up or they need environment. I'm like, I've met loads of guys that talk. Yeah. So it's finding those people that you can really open up to and talk, and like I say, who care about you and want 100%. You to win, And
in like LinkedIn, right? I've been getting more involved with LinkedIn, and I have met so many good people just on LinkedIn, right? Strangers who you can have a conversation with, they'll ask you questions and they'll get you involved in stuff. So that's where for me, like, if you're concerned about it and you don't know what to do, literally like jump on somewhere like LinkedIn, because what I like about LinkedIn is because it's businessy, a lot of stuff on there is uplifting, educational. It's not got to the point yet where there's just loads of rubbish on there.
Yeah.
Everybody on there is trying to add value in one way or another.
Definitely.
And you still have to sift through like nonsense from people who are trying to add value, but they don't actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But most people on there, really good people.
Yeah.
So even if you're concerned about that, like, connect with people, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook, you find a group of people that you can plug into, and it takes bravery. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Just making that first step, isn't it? Absolutely. I love that, Tolu. So we have a closing question on this podcast. So obviously it's now I know about sports mindset for our well-being. With everything you've learned in life, I know you're still a young man, but everything you've learned in life, what would you go back and tell teenage Tolu about a sporting mindset for his well-being?
I think what I would tell my younger self, does it have to be one thing, or can I say a few things?
As many as you want.
Many as I want. Okay.
Many lessons as you can think of.
So one thing is, everything is figure outable, right? So no matter what challenge comes up, you can broadly figure it out, right? So go into everything with that confidence that I can figure it out, and if I can't figure it out by myself, I can connect with people and know that together we can figure it out. I think I would also say that diligence is so important. So consistency. So being able to turn up every day, work hard, and make the most of your time. Because I feel like, everyone says, oh, you're a hard worker. But like, we don't actually know, like, what does hard work mean?
Yeah.
So learning about diligence and hard work from an earlier age, because I think, honestly, if I'd been that diligent. So when I moved to America for a year, I had access to a basketball court, and for 4 hours a day, I could just play basketball. And I learned to play with my left hand, and I could shoot like it was my right hand.
Wow.
Right? And that was in a few months. So imagine if I'd actually just focused on basketball or diligence at whatever it was, whether basketball or business, and put that kind of effort at game speed, practicing properly, like, you'd be a totally different person. They said if you put, I think it's like 18 minutes a day or something into something over the course of a year, it puts you in the top 5% of people for that thing in the world, right? So not that much time, but dedication, diligence, and practicing hard puts you in the best in the world, right? So that's where, like, that's probably what I would say. And also, like, buy Bitcoin is probably what I would also say.
Buy Bitcoin.
To my younger self.
It's interesting, isn't it? If you rewind time, what you would do.
Yeah. What would you do? What would you say to your younger self?
The storm does pass. I think I can get, me, I can get, like, I'm a typical Pisces. Someone said to me, Resh, you are a typical Pisces. When you're upset or down, it takes you for 2 weeks, you swim away.
Right.
And then you come back and I'm like, right, I've got over it. I'm ready now to grow. But I think I'm really hard on myself, and I think I would go back and tell myself, like, you are amazing. I think, like, when I was like, oh, really? And, my therapist, I remember I got an award as a change maker award, and someone who's adding value. And I said to my therapist, oh, I've had a really great day. I won an award. And she went, you don't need an award to know that you're amazing, right? Oh. And I was like, yeah, it's nice to have, but you're right. She was really like, you don't need all these things. You don't need all that. And I think you've shown me that. And I think I needed to believe in myself more. Yeah. Really believe in myself, have a bit more confidence, which is why I'm trying to do that with my kids. Yeah. Like, you're amazing. Yeah. Like, you've got this. And I think, a bit like that whole basketball analogy, like, just block out the noise. Yes. There is so much noise, especially culturally as well. Like, when you're going for adversity and the things, they say, they will say this and they will say, who is they? Yeah. Please tell me who is they.
Who are they and why do I care?
Yeah. Bring them to me. And one thing I said to my mum and dad was, Are they going to help me when I'm going through my lowest lows? They don't care. They
don't care.
So that's another thing I would say to my younger self. Who cares?
Yeah.
As long as you're not hurting anybody and you've got good intention, go with it. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for throwing that back at me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just so interesting how we will look. That's another reason why I call this podcast Now I Know, because I'm learning so much in my 40s, right? And I was like breathwork. Breathwork has saved me. Like, that's another thing I say to myself. When you are anxious, Resh, control your breath. It is your biggest savior is your breath control. And it's something I teach people in the office, like Sky. Some people come to me the first aid room and they're like, Resh, I know you do breathwork. Let's do breathwork together. I'm like, it's such a powerful thing. But I think, and I said to my daughter, I'm learning so much. I just wish I knew it. And then I was like, that's what the podcast can be called. Now I know. Because you always come away from a podcast and going, now I know how to recruit. Now I know how to back sports mindset. So it just sort of flowed. And it's funny you said it, because everyone's like, I just love the name.
Yeah,
now
it's
I know.
A great name.
Yeah. But
so
thank you.
Question for you. So you mentioned about anxiety. How often do you feel anxious?
Sometimes it can be every night for the next morning, because I'm a single parent. Sometimes I'll be like, am I going to wake up or miss my alarm? Wow. I get really anxious. Like, so my kids are like, you've got so many alarms going off from like 6 till 7. I'm like, because I get scared I'm not going to wake up. Yeah. I get anxious just like dropping them to school and then trying to get into the office. Right. So what I've learned to do is really prepare myself the night before. So I will check my emails every night. So I'm prepared. Like, I know which room I'm going to. I know what time I got to get to the car park. Do I need to get someone else to do the school run? Just stuff like that. So people don't realise it's almost every day.
Yeah. Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I think I've never actually asked that question, where does it come from? But I think it's just that anxiety of doing well. I just want to be the best every day. And I think I probably put too much pressure on myself. And I think we're in lockdown, I'd go to sleep, and the only way I could describe it was I felt like someone was putting a pillow over my face. Wow. And I was like waking up like with this, like trying to gasp for air. And I told my therapist, I said, she said to me, you're having a panic attack. And I didn't even know what it was. And I was like, oh my God. And that's when she taught me, like, this is what you need to do when it happens. And if these are the things that make you anxious. She said, eliminate your fears. Yes. What is your fear? Yes. Not going to wake up. Okay. 1,000 alarms, go to bed early. So like I say to like my sister, after 10, I'm not answering my phone because I need to have a really good sleep to wake up. And my kids know that they're like, Mummy gets anxious just waking up in the morning. So they're really good. They'll make sure that their clothes are ready, or they've got a clock so they know to get up. So don't just wait for your mum to get up. You know what time you've got to get up as well. If you hear the alarm going off, can you wake up? So yeah, it's really interesting how that sort of happens. And I think it's just how it happens over time. Like you're wiring yourself, and I feel like I'm rewiring myself. Yeah. And that's what people say to me. They'll be like, Resh, you've changed. What's happened? That's good. And anxiety, there's a Netflix show called The Brain Explained. Yes. And it explains how breath work calms a part of your brain that does that fight or flight. So I used to have really bad road rage. Yeah, I'd be like, oh my God. And my kids, even now it happens, I'm like, you do you.
Yeah, exactly.
And my kids are like, you're so calm. Yeah. And I'm like, breath work, babes. Or like, if the kids spill something in the morning, you're trying to get out of the house, and I'd get really annoyed. And I feel really bad looking back at the old me, but now I'll be like, oh, don't worry, just clear it up. So, we'll just clear it up later. And they're just like, who is this woman in our house? You know, so it's amazing what breathwork does, just that whole fight or flight. So I'm a lot calmer. You know, I've spoken about on your podcast before how even if I got an email from work and I'd be like, now I'm just like, I'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. But yeah, so anxiety is a big, and I know it's a big thing generally, but I didn't know it was like a panic attack until like I told my therapist, like I felt like someone put a pillow over my face and she was like, that's a panic attack. Like, I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know.
It's so interesting because I think for me what it shows is resilience as well, because, and also when you told me you're an introvert, right?
Yeah.
Like these things are, I would never think you get anxious. Never. Like it wouldn't even cross my mind. And I think what's really encouraging about that is that people can go through things, you know, sometimes introversion gets a bad rap in terms of you should be an extrovert, but it's okay to be like, it's a good thing, you know, and anxiety and things like that. It's like the fact that you function so highly as well. Yeah. I would never think of that, but I think it just goes to show that, look, all the things that happen to different people, none of it has to stop you from being successful, from being looked up to, from leading. Yeah. You know, so for me, it's inspirational when it's just like your resilience. I'm like, I didn't realize that that's what's happening every day.
Yeah. It's like when you and I were preparing for today and I was like, Tolu, sometimes I need to know a structure. And you're like, no, let it flow. And I was like, I get anxiety even just doing a podcast sometimes, because if I don't have structure, I feel like I'm out of control. So like anxiety is like lack of control of something. So if you can do something to minimize that, and I think for me, so for example, even, you know, I run lots of workshops at Sky. I like half an hour before I have to go for a walk. I have to go in the first aid room, do some breathing. Yeah. Because when I walk in, I'm so nervous, and people are like, "Are you serious?"
Could never tell.
And I tell them after, I'm like, did you know I had to do this, prep myself before I even walked into that room?
That's huge. Like that's, because sometimes I think my fight or flight is broken, because for me, like, I know that I'm not in control. And I'm just like, because I know I'm not in control, there's no point in, you know, like, there's nothing I can do. So if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. Like, I'm going to figure it out. So sometimes I wonder if like my fight or flight is broken because it just doesn't, I don't know. There's something not there. But I think those ways of dealing with it are so important, and ways of being able to still be your best self, even though you've got this battle to deal with. Like, you know, we said earlier about stories are so important. That's why I love podcasts, because people think that, for example, like podcast hosts are different kinds of people. No, they're literally just like you or me. Everybody, you know, anybody can do this.
Yes.
And there is power in sharing stories and testimonies and how you've overcome things.
Yes, definitely.
You know, it's so powerful. Because there's so many people who are going through things and they don't know how to get to the other side. Yeah. And that's what I love about Now I Know. Now I know how to get to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? And I think as well, you know, like, we just want everyone to thrive, right? And I think with me, I think I've probably I'm successful because I've, like you said, you can't do it on your own. No. I've had great mentors like yourself, like sponsors, like just someone I can just pick up that phone. You're that person, like I can just pick up the phone and just talk to you. And I said, if you ever leave, how can I get you hold of you on
just
Teams? And you were like, there's WhatsApp. I was like, okay, cool. But like, you have that support network and you know who those people are. And I think I'm so grateful. I'm only a great mum because I've got great kids around me. I'm only, you know, I've got my parents' support. I've got my brother. Like when we went to the event, my brother was looking after the kids while we went out. You know, you've got my back. You're like, Resh, come on, let's do this event together. Because me and you're like, oh my God, but we have to socialise. And I was like, if we go and do this together. And it was
great.
We were good.
It was great.
Got loads of people to look at our podcast at the same time.
Absolutely. What I was going to say is that sometimes we see winning and losing as like, I think it's called like a zero-sum game, where, you know, for Resh to win, I have to lose. But that's not actually true, right? And I was just thinking about like my friends winning, and I think some of it comes from an abundance mindset where you can win and I can win and she can win and he can win. Yes. And it doesn't mean that anybody else has to lose. You know, and I think that's really the switch in mindset, is that someone else winning doesn't mean that I have to lose. Yeah. And if you can figure that out, what actually happens is your winning ups my winning, which ups that person's, and everybody rises together. So I think that scarcity mindset needs to like die.
Yeah. Because a lot of people that are insecure about others is that they feel like they're going to lose out if someone else thrives, isn't it?
But it's not true.
And there's space for everybody.
There is so much money in this world. Yeah. that everybody could have money.
Yes.
There's so much money. There's not a lack of really anything in this world, even
Yeah.
food, right? Where people are suffering. It's not because there's a lack of food. We throw away more food than they would ever need.
Yeah.
You know, everybody can survive and thrive on this planet
Yeah.
and actually be okay. Maybe that's a bit controversial, that last one. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there is enough to go around in terms of careers and this and that. There's enough.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, the abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Like even when we've been doing this podcast, it's like the collaboration is and the community is amazing.
Yeah.
Like people just want you to do well. They're like, yeah, I'm going to come on your podcast, and then you come on mine,
Yeah.
and then we're going to share each other's stuff.
It's
And
amazing.
it's such a beautiful
amazing.
community of people. Like I'm so grateful that we're on this journey
Yeah.
in 2023. And I know it was like a little passion project, but it's just I think it's the thing that keeps me going.
Yeah.
And I think we've met great people. Like there's people I've connected with that I never thought I would connect with.
Yeah.
There are people that are supporting me that I never thought would be my supporters.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing, this journey.
And this is where like don't rely on your family, because strangers
yes.
will be more on board with your stuff
Yeah.
than your family sometimes ever would or could be.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so important to just keep going. And what's really challenged me about what you do is that you invest money into this. You go into the studio,
Yeah.
like you're consistently investing for your listeners, and that really challenged me a lot. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's when I was like, you're going to come to studio? You're like, yes, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm really grateful for the studio guys as well, because they really,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I've got a lunch break and I'm free. Can I
Yeah.
come to the studio? And they laugh at me. They're like, yeah. Not a lot of people come in a lunch break and do a talk,
No.
you know? But the way I see it is like, I'm going to talk to you anyway. Let's just do it in the studio and let's
Yeah.
share it with everyone else. They might learn
100%.
something from this conversation. The amount of times I've had conversations with people now and they'll go, we need a mic for here
Yeah.
right now while we're having this conversation. Because that's what I think I love is like, surrounding yourself with great people. Think about the people you're with right now and the sort of conversations you're having. Are they really toxic, negative conversations about others or bringing people down? Or are they like conversations like inspiring you and other people and uplifting? So I think your community and who you are around is so
important.
key.
So
key,
important.
But Tolu, thank you so much. I could talk to you forever. We're going to have to do
know.
like a part 2 and a part 3. But I'm really glad you came to the studio.
Thank you so much for having
So
me.
everyone listening, let them know how to connect with you, Tolu.
My name on LinkedIn is Tolu Adebekun. We can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And on all platforms, Dunamis EQ or Dunamis EQ Leadership Podcast. If you search that, will come up. Thank you so much.
Thank
Rash,
you,
honestly.
Tolu. I'm so looking forward to the journey for next year. Like this is just the start of the podcast journey, but thank you.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everyone for listening.